Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma ma ba'd, to proceed. So today, inshallah, we will start Kitab al-Janaiz, the book on Janaiz, or the book on funerals. Nuruddin just stepped in. He's the pro, so we should probably defer to him. But we will we'll talk about al-Janaiz today. We'll talk about washing only. We may not be able to talk about shrouding and burial and all of that. We'll just talk about washing. But before we talk about washing, we'll start with before death, upon death, and then washing. Shrouding, prayer, burial, graves, all of this will come, inshallah, in the next few sessions. We are hoping to finish the entire book, Kitab al-Janaiz, within the month of March, inshallah. Next time we'll talk about shrouding and prayer, and then burial, and then graves. But today we will start from the very beginning, before death. Imam ibn Qudamah, rahimahullah ta'ala, here, because this is a very abbreviated book, did not address, what needs to be done prior to death. But in the other Hanbali books and in the other books of the different madhab and other books in general that address this particular topic of fiqh, you will find a discussion of other issues prior to death. One of them is tadawi, which is seeking treatment. One of them is visiting the sick. One of them is talqeen, which is laqinu mawtakum la ilaha illallah, to remind the dying person to say la ilaha illallah. Some of these issues have not been mentioned, or these issues have not been mentioned by Imam ibn Qudamah here, because once again, it is a matn, it's a short matn. But they may be worth mentioning before we start to talk about washing and before we start to talk about what we need to do upon this. One of the things that are peculiar to the Hanbali madhab is that we say that, seeking treatment is suboptimal. It is better not to seek treatment for your disease. And that is a position that has been reported from Imam Ahmad, radiallahu anhu, tarku tadawi afdal. Basically, not seeking treatment is preferred, is superior, according to Imam Ahmad. This position, I just can't agree with this position because of several reasons. One of them is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, tadawa ibadallah, seek treatment, O servants of Allah. And yes, in the Hanbali madhab, it is said that this is amr irshad. This is for counseling. This command does not mean obligation. It is for counseling, and it may be for counseling. It may be for counseling, but in certain cases it cannot be for counseling. And even if it is for counseling, you don't say that it is superior to not seek treatment. At least if this hadith is for counseling and recommendation, we should say that seeking treatment is superior, is mustahab, because it is not counter to tawakkul. Imam Ahmad was afraid. Imam Ahmad was afraid. He was not afraid, but Imam Ahmad felt that tamamu tawakkul, to have complete tawakkul, complete reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would make you not seek treatment because you have tamamu tawakkul. Yet the Prophet ﷺ was the best of the mutawakkilin, and he sought treatment for himself and for others of his Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim, and he used to prescribe, he used to, use medications himself and prescribe them for his Sahaba, and he was the best of the mutawakkilin. So we might say here that with all respect and love, we will not take that position of Imam Ahmad. We'll take the position of the other scholars that considered seeking treatment superior and recommended. Now, could it be wajib? Sometimes it is wajib, particularly, think of this. Tadawa ibadallah may be a recommendation, may be because the scholars say that when commands come within the context of worldly sort of affairs, your worldly affairs, such as treatment and things of that nature, the command is not for obligation, but simply for recommendation. So, but the Prophet said, "La darar wa la dirar." There should be no harm or reciprocation of harm. Now, if you have diabetes and you refuse to take your insulin, what's going to happen to you? You'll get really sick. You'll get extremely sick, and then you will die. You know, diabetes, if you have diabetes, you refuse to take your insulin based on, you know, science, based on, you know, expert opinion and science, which is what we go by. Certainly, if Allah wants you to live, you will live. You know, sometimes people say, should we take the, you know, life support off? Should we turn the machine off? We would be killing you know, the person. Well, if Allah wants you to live, you will live. If Allah did not want Ibrahim to burn by the fire, Ibrahim will survive the fire, and Ismail will survive the knife, and Allah is all capable over all things. But within our calculations as human beings, if you don't take insulin, when you have diabetes, you'll get sicker and sicker and sicker, and then you will start to lose your eyesight, your kidneys will fail, your liver have problems, then over time, you will just die. Should this be permissible? Should it be permissible for someone to say, no, I will not take insulin? And then this person will get sicker and sicker and sicker, and he will say, I can't fast. And he will say, well, I can't pray because I can't stand up. You know, is that acceptable? You know, if we tell you, why don't you take your insulin, and then you will be able to fast and pray, and you will be able to go to work, and you will be able to fend for your family, and all of that stuff. Would it be permissible for that person to say that the agreement of the four imams, the agreement of the four madhahib, is that seeking treatment is recommended at the most, you know, and Imam Ahmad said it is inferior? It would not. It would not, and it should not, because that is counter to what, you know, what Islam is all about. La darar wa la dirar is a legal maxim. Maybe their understanding of medical treatment, medical intervention was different. They did not have insulin. You know, the treatment was based on conjecture in their times, not solid facts. You know, it was not as effective, you know, certainly in their times, treatment was not as effective as it is in our times. Should we be bound by, you know, their position and say, you know, no, I'm not going to take treatment, I'm not going to take my insulin, or if you have like TB or something, I'm not taking antibiotics. It doesn't make any sense. Is that clear? Does anyone disagree with this? Because really, if someone disagrees, we want to have a debate here. Then, visiting the sick. So visiting the sick, you know the reward of visiting the sick is a great reward. Now, you'll find also in Hanbali books that visiting non-Muslims is not permissible. You know, in some Hanbali books, particularly the books of the latter generations, you'll find in Sharh Mumtah al-Iradat, for instance, that visiting non-Muslims is not permissible. And so why is this? Why is this? Because there are 3 reports from Imam Ahmad, permissible, impermissible, and a report that is detailed. You know, permissible sometimes, impermissible, and other times. But when Imam Ahmad, so the 3 reports from Imam Ahmad, one of Imam Ahmad's reports is that it is permissible. Someone said to him, you know, I know someone who is Christian and he's sick, could I go visit them? And Imam Ahmad said to him, yes, of course you could go visit him. The Prophet ﷺ visited the Jewish boy. So here is a report from Imam Ahmad, you know, that where he justified his position by a hadith traceable authentically to the Prophet ﷺ, And so it is a position that is detailed and justifiable and justified. The fact that, people of the latter generations, the al-Muhaqqiqeen fil madhab, the verifying scholars of the madhab, took a different position of Imam Ahmad and made it the authorized position of the madhab should not make us bound by their choosing, by their choice. Imam Ahmad has three different positions. One position agrees with the other scholars. One position is justified. One position is substantiated by proofs from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ visited Abu Talib when he was about to die, when he was sick and about to die. He visited the Jewish boy. He visited Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, Ra's al-Munafiqeen, when he was sick. How could we ignore all the evidence? Just because, this is the authorized position, authorized view in the madhab, and I am really like a sort of a devout, strict madhabi, therefore I only use the authorized views in my madhab. And do you know Imam Ahmad better than al-Buhuti? No, I don't know Imam Ahmad better than Buhuti. And then someone will say, well, do you know more than Imam Ahmad? Do you know more about the Prophet ﷺ and the evidence and the dalil than Imam Ahmad? No, I don't. Therefore, Imam Ahmad knows more the dalil than you. Therefore, you must ignore the fact that the Prophet visited the Jewish man, that the Prophet visited Abu Talib, that the Prophet, visited Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. You must also ignore the fact that the Sahaba, made ruqya on someone who is not Muslim. Ladigh al-Hay, the hadith Abu Sa'id about the man who got stung. And it was like a tribe that was particularly hostile. They refused to host the Sahaba, even though this is particularly hostile conduct in Arabia. And then the Sahaba still made ruqya on their chief who got stung with al-Fatiha. And then the Prophet ﷺ approved of their ruqya. They made ruqya on a non-Muslim person who is sick. Not just visited him, they made ruqya on him using al-Fatiha. And then I am supposed to say, well, Imam Ahmad knows about the Prophet more than you, and Buhuti knows about Imam Ahmad more than you. Therefore, we're stuck here because, you have to really follow the authorized view in your madhab. And that is where we're going, because we like, because we have a very low level of education in every regard, whether it's religious or secular education or any form of education. So we like to swing with the pendulum of extremism. So anti-madhabism, strict madhabism, and keep on swinging back and forth and back and forth, because extreme positions are desirable by people who have lack of people who like to be. Extreme positions are known to build bonds of relationships between people, because people, when they take extremes, they become so attached to their extreme positions, and then bonds of relationships build among those people, and then they start to become their own, live in their own compartments and defend their own positions. That does not make any sense. It just doesn't make sense. Here the idea that the Ammi is nothing, that the Ammi cannot look into any evidence, cannot comprehend anything, that the Ammi is just like a cow, that the Ammi should be followed, whoever holds the rope, you should just walk with them. The idea of giving up your intellect, giving up your mind completely to the statement of a sheikh or an imam or a scholar is an idea that is not conducive to any good. And we've tried anti-madhabism. It doesn't work. It is not good. Those madhahib are, the greatest intellectual products in our legacy. Cumulative work of scholars throughout generations, transgenerational, transcendent, transcends time, transcends place, and all of that. Great work. Anti-madhabism is bad. Strict madhabism is just as bad. So there has to be a middle ground, and we have to find a moderate position. here in this case, you will say to yourself, well, did someone other than Imam Ahmad say otherwise? And if the scholars of the Imams of the other madhahib said otherwise, then you have room to say, yeah, it seems that scholars of the other madhahib have a point here, because it seems that the Prophet visited the Jewish boy. It seems that the Prophet visited Abdullah ibn Ubay and Salul. It seems that the Prophet visited Abu Talib. It seems that we don't have any proof that visiting the non-Muslim when they're sick is impermissible. So it looks like I can visit, my Christian neighbor when they are sick. And it looks like the rest of the Imams are okay with it. It's fine. I can take this. And then if you don't find any one of the Imams, the 4 Imams, who upholds the position that you think is substantiated and desirable, then you will have to be careful. You'll have to, positions from outside of the four mazahib must be mainstreamed by widespread scholarly acceptance or collective ijtihad. Otherwise, they should not be mainstreamed by minor students of knowledge. So a minor student of knowledge should not be scavenging for our legacy, our heritage for positions, or scanning our heritage basically to find a position here or there that is outside of the 4 schools and to start to propagate it and mainstream it yourself. That's not good. You wait until there is widespread scholarly acceptance. We've given examples before about positions outside of the 4 Imams, outside of the 4 madhahib that have widespread scholarly acceptance, like Ibn Taymiyyah's position, rahimahullah, about the 3 divorces counting as one. The 3 divorces counting as one. The idea that all Ammis are the same is not intelligent. It is not an intelligent idea, because the Ammi that's only 2 or 3 days from being a mujtahid is not like the Ammi who basically does not know anything about anything. There are Ammis who don't know anything about anything. And there are Ammis who are only 2 nights from being a mujtahid. They are not the same people, and we can't treat them similarly. They are different. Is that clear? So you could visit anyone who is sick, whether they are Muslim or not Muslim. Now, the third point that we wanted to discuss is the point of talqeen. لَقِّنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, which means remind your dying ones. Mawtakum here does not mean your dead ones. It means your dying ones. لَقِّنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Remind your dying ones of La ilaha illallah. Remind your dying ones of La ilaha illallah. Talqeen is to say it in front of them so that they can remember to say it, or you could instruct your dying ones to say La ilaha illallah. Instruct your dying ones to say La ilaha illallah. The best way you could instruct them to say La ilaha illallah is to say it in front of them so that you don't, certainly you want to remind them of writing their wasiyyah, but you're going to visit someone, and it is in the madhab that whether the illness is terminal or not, if you go visit someone, remind them to write their wasiyyah. But let's say this is someone that you're not really familiar with. It is like a friend. It's like someone that, and you go to visit them. They just caught the flu, and you go visit them and tell them, you know what, I think you should write your wasiyyah. It's not particularly kind or anything at this point. In fact, if you do it when they're not sick, that would be much kinder. You just remind all the people all the time, write your wasiyyah, because it is not appropriate for a Muslim to, sleep 2 nights without writing his wasiyyah and having his wasiyyah underneath his pillow. Remind them. But if someone is sick, someone got sick, you go visit them in the hospital, they got a stent in their heart, and then everybody goes and tells them, write your wasiyyah, write your wasiyyah, write your wasiyyah. That's not particularly helpful. So you have to use prudence, you have to use wisdom. Talqeen, you repeat it 3 times according to the madhab, but you don't have to be rough when you say to them, say la ilaha illallah, say la ilaha illallah. Just say it in front of them they will remember it and they will say. Now, if there's someone that you know will not be offended, if you say to them, instruct them, you know, affirmatively, say la ilaha illallah, say it. If you're sure that there will not be particularly offended. Okay, Sheikh rahimahullah, Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, وَإِذَا تُيُقِّنَ مَوْتُهُ أو تيقن موته. But it's better here to make it in the passive voice. إذا تيقن موته. If his death is ascertained, غمضت عيناه. غمضت عيناه. His eyes should be closed, because the Prophet ﷺ did this to Abu Salama when he went in. He closed Abu Salama's eyes, because you know, if you die, your eyes could be open and may stay open, and that would look disfigured. That would be sort of a disfigured look or disfiguring. So you close the eyes. The first thing, you know, once death is ascertained. How you ascertain death? If there is any doubt, they tell you wait from Ghadwa to Ashiyya, wait like 1 day. That's like one daytime. So, you know, like half a day. Or in some reports, if you're really doubtful, Qadi Abu Ya'la said, I think Qadi Abu Ya'la said, you could wait 2 days. Basically, have the doctors ascertain the person's death. If you're unsure, wait to ascertain their death, and their death can be ascertained by the limbs becoming very loose, their wrists becoming very loose, you know, this goes in, you know, the cheeks will go in, and even the tip of the nose will be, loose, like, so you wait until death is ascertained before you start the process, the final rites. So first thing you will do is to close the eyes. The Prophet ﷺ did this to Abu Salama. وَشُدَّ لَحْيَا. And شُدَّ لَحْيَا means that his jaw should be tied. The lahi is this. The lahyan, this and this. So you tie it, you wrap something around it, so that it is not, the mouth does not stay open, because once again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to honor our brother or sister. So if their eyes are open, that's disfiguring, you close the eyes. If the mouth is open, that is disfiguring, you close the mouth. And then وَجُعِلَ عَلَى بَطْنِهِ مِرْآةٌ أَوْ غَيْرُهَا. وَجُعِلَ عَلَى بَطْنِهِ مِرْآةٌ أَوْ غَيْرُهَا. It means, and a mirror or something else heavy should be placed on his abdomen. The idea here is you avoid anything that may be disfiguring. And the abdomen could become distended after death, and that is disfiguring. So it was reported that Anas instructed people to do this to a boy who died, to put like something heavy on their stomach so that the abdomen does not get distended. If you have something better than a mirror, or if you have like, you know, like if there's a hospital or something that you have something to wrap around the abdomen so that it does not get distended, then you do this. The purpose here is that the abdomen does not get distended. Now, after you had done this, after you had done these basic things, you know, close, and put something on the abdomen so that it does not get distended, what you need to do is to cover from head to toe. Cover the entire body from head to toe, because that was done to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he died. And then you can uncover, certainly, and it was also reported by Bukhari that when Abu Bakr walked in after the Prophet ﷺ had died, he uncovered his head and he kissed them. So people family members may... You could uncover. So covering, the Prophet ﷺ was covered from head to toe. This was reported by al-Bukhari and Muslim. You do this. That is to honor the deceased. Like with a sheet. You grab like a clean sheet and then you cover the deceased person from head to toe. Now people come in, relatives, friends, close friends, and so on. They come in, they find the deceased covered. They want to see him or her. So they can uncover, and certainly the mahramiyya issue is still applicable here. It's not that they are dead that mahramiyya issue is not applicable. People who are not meant to look, so the aura of the deceased must be honored, must be covered, and their privacy must be honored. People who are not from the immediate kin, that are maharim, are not supposed to look at the aura that non-maharim should not look at. But close family members and friends, they may uncover the head, and if they also want to kiss their deceased relative, they may do this, as al-Bukhari reports from Abu Bakr that he had done this to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then, so covering and uncovering for the family members and friends also. I mean, if it is a man also, like anyone can uncover the head. If a woman, any woman can, if it's a man, and if it's a woman, any woman can uncover the head. Then asri'u bil janaza. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith reported by Bukhari, and Muslim asri'u bil janaza, which means hasten with the funeral or the process, speed up the process of the janaza. Janaza is basically all the final rites, everything that will be done to the deceased until the deceased is buried. So we want to speed up the whole process until the deceased is buried. Now, should we wait for someone to come from overseas, or should we wait for someone to come from a different state? Yes, we should wait if that person is a close relative, if there is no fear for the body to, to go into the process of decay. We can keep the body. It is not too warm. The body could be kept. That person's son is coming, I don't know, from overseas, but the person's son is coming from Virginia. They're driving up here. Wait until they come. Wait until they come. Asri'u bil janaza also means that you bury as soon as possible, which means that you bury nearby, that you don't, the Prophet ﷺ was buried in the Hujra of Aisha, and it is part of honoring the deceased that you don't move the body too far away and that you bury the deceased nearby, unless it has been the deceased's request to be buried elsewhere. Then we honor their wish. We honor their request, given that it is not too burdensome, that there will not be extreme hardship ensuing from this. Like if the deceased wanted to be buried, let's say in Egypt, and we don't have this, we don't need to be collecting from people $10,000 for this. If the deceased left enough money to be buried in Egypt, then that is fine. But we can send the body to Egypt to honor the wish. It is not recommended, and it is not recommended that you make that part of your will or part of your wasiyah that you want to be buried far away. It is recommended that you just get buried wherever you die. Even though it is not recommended, we will honor it if this was part of his will, that he left enough money to be executed or for this wish to be honored, then we will honor it. That's clear. Asri'u bil janaza. Then, while you're speeding up the process, everything should be fast. We should move 1, 2, 3, because honoring the body is the burial of the, quick burial of the body is the best way to honor the body. while we're doing this, we're doing things that are also important. The dayn wal wasiyya, they need to be, we pay off the debts, particularly the debts. The debt comes before the wasiyya, as Aliyah radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet ﷺ instructed that the dayn comes before a wasiyya. The Prophet said this because the wasiyya comes before the dayn in the Quran, not to indicate the order, but to point out the importance of the wasiyya, because the importance of the dayn is established. So wasiyya was mentioned first in the Quran to point out the importance of the wasiyya, but not to indicate the order. من بعد وصية يوصون بها أو دين. So after wasiyya or dayn, this order in the Quran is not for it, it is to point out the importance of al-wasiyya. But the Prophet said that the dayn must be paid before al-wasiyya. Pay off the debts. The Prophet ﷺ stressed this many times. One time he even refused to do the janazah prayer for someone who died with an unpaid debt, who was someone who owed people money. Okay, so that is immediately after this. And then Imam Qudamah rahimahullah said, فَإِذَا أَخَذَ فِي غَسْلِهِ سُتِرَتْ عَوْرَتُهُ. He will start to talk about washing here. We'll start to talk about washing. Are we missing anything before washing? Hopefully not. So washing. Washing is a fard kifaya, is a communal obligation. If there is not enough people in the community to wash, then that is certainly a sin that we all earn, or we all accrue, or we all carry that sin. So, but what if there is no one except you? Then it becomes an individual obligation. What if there is no one but you to wash the dirt? Then it becomes an individual obligation. So it is either a communal obligation or an individual obligation. And we will talk later about who is to be washed and who is not to be washed. Martyrs are not to be washed. People who are killed unjustly not to be washed. But that is a different discussion that we will come to later. So he said, Imam Qudamah said, فَإِذَا أَخَذَ فِي غَسْلِهِ سُتِرَتْ عَوْرَتُهُ. When they start to wash him, his awra should be covered. His awra should be covered. So who washes here, and what awra to be covered, and whose awra is, to be honored? First of all, in the Hanbali madhab, if you're less than 7, there is no awra for you. If you're less than 7, there is no awra. If you're more than seven, if you're a boy, 7 to 10, your awra is only basically the private parts, 7 to 10. You'll get confused. If you get confused, just use 7s. Less than 7, no awra. More than 7, there is awra. The awra for everyone will be, except for that 7 to 10 thing for Hanbalis if you're a boy. But the awra for everyone will be from the navel to the knees. The awra for a woman also from the navel to the knees? Yes, the awra for a woman is from the navel to the knees. Keep in mind, who's washing her? Women. However, that is a little bit controversial. It's controversial whether the awra in life for a woman is from the navel to the knees. What made the scholars say this? Because women usually breastfeed in front of each other, so they figured that the breasts must not be part of the awra. Then where should we start? Then start from the navel to the knees. That is women among themselves. However, other scholars, and that seems to be a very sort of strong position, consider the awra of a woman is what does not appear usually, that which does not appear usually, particularly in the case of service and so on. Yes, women can breastfeed in front of each other, but this does not mean that she will have sort of all of the entire body above the navel exposed in front of another woman. You would usually not do this. So you also want to be respectful of this, and you want to cover a little bit more for a woman, even though she's being washed by a woman. Keep in mind, if there is no woman to wash her, she's not going to be washed. To that extent, we are basically concerned with people's privacy and the covering of awra. What is going to happen to her If she is in the company of men, she's traveling in the company of men. There is no woman. What's going to happen to her? Tayammum. To yammam. So they will basically they will do tayammum for her. They'll do tayammum for her. The opposite is true. A man in the company of women. Who's going to wash? The first one to wash is al-wasi. If her husband is around, he can wash her. That's in the Hanbali madhab, not in the Hanafi madhab. But they put the husband down, far down on the list to respect the Hanafis. They really say that. They say lil-khilaf, because of the disagreement. And once there is a disagreement, they try to respect the disagreement. So the first one who would wash is the wasi, okay? In the Hanbali madhab, the first one who would wash is the wasi. The second is al-ab and going up, howsoever high, so al-jad and so on. Then al-ibn and going down, howsoever low. And then basically it will be the heirs of his asabat, his paternal kin, heirs of his paternal kin, in the order of their inheritance. So if I make hajj, if I obstruct your inheritance, then I am more entitled to washing than you. And then it will be ulul arham, which is maternal kin. Ulul arham is not only maternal kin, but also kin that could be on your father's side, but through a woman. Kinship that goes through the womb, the rahim. And then who washes? Spouses. After this, spouses. We're talking here about what? A man. All of this is a man here. And then the spouse here would be his wife. For a woman, it would be also wasi, whoever she designated to wash her before her death, and all would be women. Her mother, howsoever high, her daughter, howsoever low, and then women kin, her women kin, hasaba and maternal, and then her husband. And after her husband, who washes? Ajanib, any woman from any woman, from the community. After his wife, who washes? Any man from the community.
Question: is the spouse before or after anybody from the female or a male?
We're doing Hanbali here, so we're not, it's just like the spouse here at the bottom. The spouse comes only before al-ajanib, before the foreign, sort of the unrelated people, but he comes after everybody because we're trying to respect the Hanafi position that says the spouse does not wash. But at the same time, we know that Aisha said, had we gone back to the time when the Prophet ﷺ died, no one would have washed him except his wives. So we are cognizant of Aisha's statement. We're cognizant that many of the Sahaba, Abu Bakr, the designated Asma bint Umays, his wife Asma bint Umays, to wash him. Asma washed Abu Bakr's wife, not his daughter, washed Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu because he designated her to. So we are cognizant of this. Therefore, it's not like we are accepting the Hanafi position, but we're showing sort of respect to it. Therefore, we're putting the spouses down on the list to show respect for the disagreement between the four madhahib. But at the same time, we're recognizing that it is absolutely permissible because of all of those reports. Because of all of those reports.
So there's a wasiya case closed.
Wasiya goes first.
Of the spouse.
If I make wasiya that my spouse washes me, the wasiya will go first. the person designated by the deceased will go first. And certainly if the deceased designate their spouse to wash them, they will go first. Yeah. Nowadays, like, death has become sterilized, sanitized, to the extent that it is sort of like an it's like a mechanical process that, you know, so you die, you call up somebody, you know, and you're done. And you don't even want to deal with, like, the deceased. Like, people are just too timid to come near their deceased relative. Anyway.
So it's preferable for the family to do it as opposed to hiring someone to do it?
It is, yeah.
Just in inheritance, the spouse inherits before the parent. So even if we're respecting the Hanafi opinion, isn't it better for the spouse to give the request to the spouse first anyway?
Because we're considering, yeah, the spouse does inherit before others, but we are considering the fact.
That's good for them, Penny, but they have more rights, the spouse.
Yeah, but the idea here is that the Hanafis are saying that the contract becomes, like, the contract is terminated upon death. So that the contract is terminated upon death because contracts are all terminated upon death. And this is a man and this is a woman. So there is an issue here. This is a man, she is a woman. They were married. There was a contract between them, but all contracts get terminated upon death. So anyway, just to show respect for their position, we're putting the spouses on the bottom. But in practicality, if you designate your spouse, they will jump to the top. They will be the wasi. They'll jump to the top. So if you want your spouse to do the washing, you designate your spouse as the person to do the washing before you die. Yes?
If it gets terminated, then, you know, the spousal contract.
We're saying that this is the Hanafi's position. We're trying to be Hanbali here. No, but this is. But in the contract, according, you're forcing me to defend the position that I don't uphold in per se. But out of respect for the Hanafis, their viewpoint is contracts are terminated upon death. That is the nature of contracts. These people have a contract. Marriage is a contract, you know, mutual agreement. So one of them died, the contract is terminated. Now, the Jumhur said no. She is going to wash him because she was his wife, and so on. Many scholars said, you know, particularly al-Hadith and stuff, they say the spouse is first, not at the bottom, at the top. But we're just going over the Hanbali viewpoint here. They put the spouse at the bottom to respect the disagreement that happened between the Imams. And unfortunately, we're I don't know what. Well, let's just finish this particular segment, and then, you know, we'll finish the rest of the washing next time, inshallah. So he said, Imam al-Qudamah rahimahullah said, ثم يعصر بطنه عصرا رفيقا ثم يلف على يده خرقة فينجي. Then, so we've done this, okay? Now, we've covered, because you will wash while the deceased is covered, from the navel to the knees. And if she is a woman, be a little bit more generous with your covering. But in the Hanbali madhab, it's still from the navel to the knees because it will be women who are washing her. So then what we will do now is we will try to move all the excrements, the feces and stuff, everything that is inside the abdomen, the stool. We'll try to move this and try to clean afterwards. After we squeeze it out, we try to clean, and then we will make wudu, and then we will make ghusl for the deceased, just like the ghusl that we make, starting from the right side, starting with the right side and then the left side. We will cover this in detail next time. But this time he is saying then his abdomen should be squeezed gently. The one doing the washing should wrap his hand with a cloth and wash the private parts, because after you squeeze the abdomen gently, stuff will come out. This will need to be washed. Can it be wiped only? No. There is this agreement within the madhab, but washed. Just remember washed. So you will sit them up almost all the way up, and you will massage the abdomen. Squeeze may have not been the best word. We could have used the massage. You will massage the abdomen, but asr is squeeze, I guess. You use squeeze. Squeeze is better. It is basically like a firm massage of the abdomen to get the stuff out, to honor the deceased, because if you don't do it now, it will happen a little bit later after you shroud them, and that would not be nice. So to honor the deceased, you're doing this to clean them, and then after you clean, you will make wudu for them. Wudu is done one time only. Wudu is done as part of the first ghusl only. If you need to repeat the ghusl several times, you're not repeating the wudu several times. The wudu is done with the first ghusl only. If you need to repeat the ghusl, you're not repeating the wudu. But before every ghusl, you're doing this firm massage or squeezing of the abdomen to see if something comes out. Up to 7 times. After 7 times, does he say this? Later, yeah, it will be said later. But since we mentioned it, after 7 times, you don't need to worry about it. You need to just plug the area with something that will prevent the stool from coming out after 7 times. So you're doing up to 7 times. Every time you do it, you repeat the washing. You're washing this area and washing the entire body. If it's still coming out, then you use something. They use cotton. They use like certain types of mud that's clay, that is hard, that plugs the area and prevents soiling, because that is the objective, to prevent soiling. We will, I think we're done. We're 2 minutes over, so we will just stop here. And next time we will finish. Hopefully we'll be able to finish washing and shrouding next time. قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We will take 5